Okay, let's welcome our guest today, David Ledger from the UK. Welcome. Hi. So you're the director of the short film called Rejoyce, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so maybe you could tell us a little bit about this very humorous, very funny piece of work.
Sure, yeah. So I started writing it about 2 months after my grandma on my dad's side passed away, and the seed of the idea really was wanting to tell something of the story of this woman who I kind of feel like actually I didn't know loads about, but who I guess in her own way came into her own after her husband, my grandfather, kind of passed away, and she always dreaded the idea of outliving him. She would always she would always kind of say that, you know, regularly, and it always struck me. Anyway, I wanted to write something as a bit of an ode to the time that she spent after him, and because in many ways I think she had lived her life somewhat vicariously through him and through his work, because he was a vicar, he was a priest in the Church of England in the UK, and that was a lot of my upbringing was kind of, I had a lot of that tied up in it, and I wanted to write a story about this woman who was it was enigmatic and kind of clearly quite complex, and had a lot of repression going on, things that I've kind of found out subsequently about her as well through family members, and I wanted to tell her story a little bit, you know.
The story itself, the short film itself is to me very funny, because Amanda Walker, she looks very like a serious little nanny kind of thing, but then as she was reading out her novel, it was so funny. So that part I know is fictional, right?
Yes, it is.
So why did you decide to include such a chapter in this film?
I mean, there was I guess there's two kind of main elements to that, as an answer. There's the fact that obviously I wanted to lean into something that was so, you know, contrary to the life that she and my grandfather had lived in the church.
Right, yes.
Right? And then in terms of drawing from the truth of her and her life, she always had this really interesting sense of humour, right? That every now and again would sort of come out at bizarre times, and it was often quite sexual, you know. And I remember my dad telling me stories of comments that she'd made over the years and things that she'd said around the dinner table, and in the film there's this kind of dinner table scene, and for me in family life, and the dinner table has always been quite an evocative space, you know, of a lot of conflict and anxiety, you know, all these kind of things, and so my dad would tell me these stories of things jokes that she would make and things that she would say, and I was like, wow, this is really interesting. There was clearly a lot going on for this woman that you know, she was never really able to express. So certainly, at least in a way that I ever heard, you know.
Were you close to your grandma?
I was, we were close. We had a very funny relationship. I could make her laugh, I think, a lot, and in the film, the character's name is Winifred. So Winifred was her middle name. Sorry, excuse me. Winifred was her first name. And Joyce was her middle name, but she hated the name Winifred. So she took Joyce on as her name. But I was kind of the only person in the family that could sort of get away with calling her Winnie. I think she quite liked it, and we had this funny relationship, which again I wanted to sort of show really between the daughter character Laura and Winnie's character, this kind of this generational thing that sort of skipped that generation, and how they have this bond. I think she and I had that. You know, we could make each other laugh. And hopefully that is kind of a little bit present in the film.
Were you already making films before she passed away?
No, this is my debut. This is my debut film. I had my kind of past life was when I was younger. I was acting, and then I went into sort of theatre directing. Ran a theatre company for a number of years before going to drama school in the UK. And then after drama school, then sort of found filmmaking.
So she doesn't really know anything about you making this film.
No,
about her, right?
No, she doesn't. And it's funny actually. I was lying in bed the other night, kind of thinking about that, and yeah, it is bittersweet,
right.
You know, ironically given the name of the block that the film is in, and yeah, I was thinking about it the other night, and you know, in the way that often family members will say to, you know, people in the creative industries, oh, you know, your name will be in lights one day, and whatever. And no, she hasn't, obviously, because she's no longer with us, been able to see this journey, you know, which obviously is sad, and it is bittersweet. But yeah, I like to think that, you know, there's a nice irony within that, and a poetic kind of beautiful kind of irony to it as well, you know.
Okay. What do you think she would think about this film or this character that you made her into?
I mean, I guess that's kind of the question that I get asked probably most, I think, and it is in a way like one of the most pertinent questions. I mean, I think that she would think ultimately it was fun. I think ultimately she would like it. You know, she had this kind of glint in her eye that I wanted to portray in the main character in the film. Right. You know, the fact of the matter is that she lived her life in the church. Yeah. You know, she lived a fairly kind of conservative life in that way. Yeah. You know, but you know, knowing her as well as I did, I think that she would find the whole thing probably a bit silly, you know, but also I think she'd like it. Yeah, she'll have a good laugh. I think she'd have a laugh, I do. How is it working with Amanda Walker? How was it? So yeah, Mandy is, she's just like a lovely human. She's a lovely person. You know, she is kind of that archetype of, you know, you see a sweet older woman and you think, oh, they're going to be so lovely, but she really is. You know, she I cast her, I found her because through a friend actually who just worked with her in a piece of theatre. Okay. And he mentioned her name to me, and I sort of looked her up and recognised her and looked at her showreel and was like, oh wow, look, she looks quite a lot like my grandma. There are, you know, there are definitely physical similarities there. Right. And then she agreed to do the film, and I went over to her house to do the kind of the first read through. And I remember her opening the front door, and it was a little strange because it was a bit like, you know, starstruck. Well, it was less of that. It was just more like, because she looked like my grandma, right? Oh, okay. So, you know, exactly. You know, so it was a bit. You know, you spend all this time writing this character, and you're including all these elements and these character traits of this person that you knew who's no longer with you. And then, you know, this person opens the door who's meant to portray her, and she looks a lot like her. And it was strange, and I had to sort of hold that down to a degree. You know, obviously I explained that to her, and she thought that was very sweet as well. Okay. But more than anything, she was just open, and she was so encouraging with what I was trying to do and the story that I was trying to tell. Because, you know, there are themes in there that you don't often, I think, see probably in film with an older person, especially with an older woman. Right. You know, with her as a sexual being, you don't often see that, and you know, that was something that I was nervous about at first, in a way, because I thought, wow, this person is a number of years away from me, different gender as well. Right. There are differences here, but she was open from the get-go. You know, there's one scene in the film where she's in bed and she's masturbating in bed, right? Yes. And I was nervous about that scene. I was nervous about talking to her about that scene, and it was the first scene that she spoke about before we even started the read-through. She was like, oh, that scene, I thought that was great. You know? Really? Yeah, that's what she said. Yeah, she said, I thought that was great, because and she said, because, you know, we do these things, you know? Yeah, it's reality, right? It is, it is. And that just immediately, it just put me at ease. It was like, okay, I feel like my instincts have been right here, you know, and that came from her. Okay. Well, aside from that scene, were there any like memorable or very special moments during the filming or working with the team? I mean, the whole thing was full of special moments for me. Obviously, as you know, we've sort of said it's a story. It's the characters within the story and the setting of the story are very, very close to me. I mean, for instance, the house belongs to a lovely woman her name is Val. I must name check her because she incredibly kindly lent me her house for 2 very long days. But she was I believe she still goes to the same. So I knew of the house because we used to, me and my family used to go to her house like at Easter. And she was in the church that I was kind of brought up in when I went to church back in the day, sort of thing. And I remember when I was thinking about a location to shoot in, because I wanted somewhere that felt like my grandparents' place. Yeah. But there's, I mean, obviously they were no longer sort of with us. That was kind of impossible to do that. But also, it wasn't lived in the way, because they weren't around anymore. Right? So I needed somewhere that was sort of lived in. And one day I was sat with my mum and my sister, and I thought, oh, hang on a minute. I remember Val's house having a very similar kind of feeling, and it's in North London where I was brought up, and it was so where the whole thing is set, and it just had this right feeling. And I remember going there and looking around it and thinking, yeah, this is perfect. So even that as an example, having the crew who were just brilliant and so giving as well, and just in that space with this story, it was all these strange elements of my life kind of overlapping, but then all these new people who were kind of bringing this story to life. And it's a very, I often reflect on that, and I think, as a filmmaker, especially if you're doing things that are auto-fictional in a sense, it's a very, I guess, almost like liminal space you operate in, of these fictional and truthful worlds overlapping one another. And it's a very strange feeling. I don't entirely have the words to describe how that feels, but it's a very specific feeling, and it is very special. I think it's nice when you do something that's that personal, but at the same time you're doing it with a team of like very fun, very full of fun people. Absolutely, and people who are just willing to, because short films they're hard to make, and they're long hours, and the budgets are low, and no one, it's like, it's all well and good you as the filmmaker sort of not sleeping much, and etc., because it's your baby, and that's fine. But then you have these other people who it's not their baby, and they're pulling similar hours to you, and you just think, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry to be putting you through this. But so then to have that energy kind of being given back to you, a prime example is the DOP that I work with. Her name is Abby, and she's like brilliant, and we met because of Rejoyce. We were linked up through the producer, one of the producers of the films, and so I wanted a particular DOP from a particular kind of background and a space, and I was introduced to Abby, and we just clicked straight away, and she gave me and has given me so much confidence in what I was trying to do. Okay. Well, the film touches slightly a little bit on religious topics. Would you say that? Does it become sensitive though, because of the queerness of this film versus like the religion part of it? I mean, it's interesting. I think it's, for me, it's worlds obviously kind of colliding, which is important for me to portray in this film. As I said, I was brought up in the church and went to church until the age of, I don't know, mid-teens, when it stops kind of aligning with lots of stuff. right. And but equally, I don't. I also didn't want to take too much of a dim view on the church in the film, and in many ways I still don't. I mean, of course, there are many things about it that I do are awful, and I do not agree with at all, of course. But there are things about it that are also can be very sweet. There's a sense of community, and there's this deep irony with the church that whilst on one hand they take in the kind of great unwashed, they take in everyone, they everyone is kind of welcome, but also not everyone is welcome at the same time, right? So it's this weird contrast that the juxtaposition that happens within the church. Anyway, these are my kind of personal feelings, but so I have these mixed feelings towards the church, and I don't mean the church as an institution. The church as an institution, I stay far away from me, but in terms of like the community of it and individual people, and it's a very interesting place to set a story like this. I mean, as a interesting kind of detail within the film, the church that we shot at, It's a church called St Thomas in Finsbury Park in North London, which is very near where I live.
Okay.
And we were struggling to find a church to allow us to film some of the stuff in that film, right? And I remember I sent the script to a couple who were initially open to it. I sent the script off, and then kind of tumbleweed. I kind of heard nothing back, you know. And then I don't know why I didn't do it initially. Again, it probably comes from because when I went to church, I went to a church in North London. It wasn't inclusive in that way, and suddenly the penny dropped. I was like, oh, I should be approaching inclusive churches here, right? Because in theory, they should be more open to a story like this. And I approached this one that I just mentioned, and they were just open to it. I was like, oh wow, okay, cool. And we used it, and it was gorgeous, and the people who let me use the place were so lovely and giving. So it was a really interesting experience, and rich, but also just kind of like humorous as well, and quite funny.
I had a very good time watching this film. So if our audience also wants to be a part of this very wonderful film called Rejoyce, there's still tickets available on, you could find out more on the LGFF Instagram, and also on their social media accounts to how to buy tickets. So today I'd like to thank you, David, for being with us, and hopefully everybody will get to see this very wonderful film, and perhaps more films coming from you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.